Welcome, one and all, to the Success Curious podcast. It's your man, Andy, here, and I'll tell you what, gang, I don't know if I've fallen under a lucky star or something because my guests recently have been absolute rock stars, and this is another one off the conveyor belt of rock stars in Australia. Holly Fowler is the founder and chief executive officer of the social platform Wable, which is a platform that connects neurodivergent people with social interactions and helps them to forge more connections. Holly is someone who has been in the sports world and the broadcasting world, and she has recently been named as one of Forbes 30 under 30 for 2025. She is an absolute superstar based in Melbourne, Australia. Holly Fowler, how the heck are you?
I'm good. Well, that was quite the intro, Andy. Yeah, you just really smashed that out. It was great. You should be in broadcast radio yourself. So, thank you for having me.
Honestly, man, I mean, I could start picking your brains and just turning into a complete selfish prick around that because I would love to do that at some point. But I pride myself on my intros, right? I do pride myself on them. But Holly, I'm really, really proud, more so than that, to have you on the show. I mean, the work that you are doing, um, not just with the platform, and we're going to dig into that shortly, but the thing that really impresses me about you, having with having got some sort of neurodivergency myself, right, is brought to the shop, is the fact that you are not just talking about something, you're actually taking action towards mobilizing the benefits potentially of neurodivergency, but you're also looking at actively taking action to challenge some of the problems with people that have got some neurodivergent issues, right? I just think there's so much talk and not enough action. So when I saw your platform, I was like, man, someone's doing something about it, which is mega. So I'm absolutely delighted to have you on the show. So tell me, like, before you crack on, have you got some sort of neurodivergence? Have you been rubber stamped or any of this shit, or
Well, I knew you were the podcast to come on, Andy, because from one ADHDer to another, we can get shit done. And so I knew I had to come on your podcast after hearing about your book. So I knew we'd have a fun chat. But yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean it's amazing that to now see Wable come to life because it feels like not all that long ago was just kind of an idea on my couch. So yeah, it's pretty wild to see just how far it's come.
I'm really looking forward to hearing all about the story of it first before we crack on into talking about you. But for those people that don't know who you are, Holly, because you could argue it's a very overused cliche, but you have kind of burst onto the scene a little bit here, right? So give us a bit of an MO, give everybody a bit of a background, a bit of an elevator spiel on who you are and how you got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. My elevator pitch, as they say. Of course, yeah, I'm Holly. As you mentioned, I'm founder and CEO at Wable. I'm 26, hailing from Melbourne, Australia. And I launched Wable last year, February last year, 2024. So yeah, Wable and myself sort of did burst onto the startup scene because I had, never really um aspired to be an entrepreneur. It was sort of not by accident, but because I've always sort of applied myself to whatever I was doing. But yeah, it wasn't something that's sort of planned for. I worked in broadcast radio, so anyone who says they can't change careers in their late 20s or any time in life, I think I've hopefully given them an example that you can. But yeah, I was in lockdown of 2020 here in Melbourne. I don't know if you were in
All
Melbourne at that
right.
time, but we were all sort of, yeah, we were all locked down all around the world, but Melbourne was the longest and the hardest, probably I think in the whole world.
No, we
So
did.
it was a
We
lot
do
of
we do have
time.
the world record for that, which is not a wanted one, but we do hold the world record.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a wanted record, but here we are. But it did allow probably more time for me to have space at home and more time for ideas. And maybe that was a silver lining that came out of it. But I was absolutely glued to Love on the Spectrum when it went from the
Hmm.
ABC and then hit Netflix. And I was already acutely aware of many challenges facing particularly autistic people with online connection. But I thought, I mean, there's two problems here. One, that neurodivergent people don't have many spaces to find one another online, or at least safe spaces. And two, autistic people or neurodivergent people are severely underrepresented in the workplace, which is really workplaces shooting themselves in the foot, because neurodivergent people are the brightest entrepreneurs, most creative thinkers in the whole world, really. And so to me, it was like, okay, I can see the dating element. The modern dating apps aren't really meeting the needs of neurodivergent people, but there are two problems here. So let's try and connect the neurodivergent population together and connect them with their place in the world, with venues around them, with workplaces. And so from my couch, I thought, oh, I wonder if I could build some sort of. Originally, it was kind of just the dating element, but then it grew so much more from there. And it was really just a moment of like, oh, well, why the fuck, like, couldn't I do it?
Mm.
Like, I'm gonna do this. And one thing about me is when I get an idea, really stuck in my head, I have to see it through for better or for worse. And Wable was an idea I just could not let go of. I literally couldn't sleep until I saw this through, and launched. So, and here we are, now in 2025, launched. Wable is in Australia and New Zealand, and it's a nice time for us to chat because we're literally 4 weeks away, from US and UK launch. So it's all happening.
There's so much to unpack around that, right? I think one thing that we're going to need to unpack at some point during this podcast is how you've managed to, for want of a better phrase, how you've managed to weaponize ADHD, how you've managed to sort of turn it into something of a superpower. And I know that sounds cliched, gang, and I try and avoid the cliches as best as I can, as you know, team. But Holly is almost the model example of someone who has taken the things that she knows she's got sort of rattling around in her noggin, and really gone, right, screw it. If I'm going to become hyper focused, then this is what I'm going to, I just feel that a lot of people use ADHD in particular, but they use a lot of these neurodivergent issues as an excuse, right? Instead of a weapon. They use it as a reason for not doing, or a barrier for not doing, as opposed to a reason for getting shit done, right? I see it all the time, and you see it in workforces all the time. There, it might not be ADHD or autism or anything like that, but even just mental health concerns of any way, shape, or form. I think there's a hell of a lot of people using this stuff as an excuse, for not getting things done. So I just love your personification of what can be done, with something of this sort of nature. And now, before I dig into a lot of that, though, and then my editor Adrian cracks the shits with me burying this next question in conversation, I need to ask you what your definition of a successful human is. I bet you it's changed over the course of the last few years, but mine obviously is a representation of 4 key elements: success, connection, influence, and happiness, and no one can survive without the other. We're living in a little ecosystem. But Holly Fowler, what is your definition of a successful human?
It's a good question. I think like what you said as well about it changing. I think my definition's probably changed over time, and maybe if we catch up again this time next year, it might have shifted again. But I think at the core for me, uh, being successful means waking up every day and being passionate about what you're doing. And I think I'm somebody that couldn't give their all into something unless I was super passionate about it. So that is and one thing I get to do with I wake up every day. I hear from people that have fallen in love on the app, have made new friends, who connected with someone they otherwise wouldn't have connected with. And that to me just brings so much meaning and purpose to my life. That actually being a part of Wable, and making a difference to other people's life, in turn makes a difference to mine. It brightens up every other factor of my life, not just my professional life, my personal life. I sort of am Wable, so you know, to me, that purpose of getting up every day. And if you don't have that, like I actually don't know how I could do it, because having a startup is extremely lonely, and difficult and isolating. Um, we hear all the time about burnout. Like, I mean, I couldn't work on Australian and US hours for 4 years to bring something to life if I didn't have the passion. So for me, it's that. But then now, as Wable is growing, I think a really key element of success for me is becoming, yes, that purpose thing, but can I create greater purpose and opportunities for other people that are also aligned with my vision? So I think for me now, like getting to involve neurodivergent people in not only obviously the build of the app to get to launch, but now as it continues to evolve in other roles, to me is success. Like I get to now share it and create opportunities for other people as well as myself.
Mm.
Um, and so and contribute to, um, and creating a real impact that I can see and hear and, me I've sat across and had coffee from people on the apps that have told me what it means to them. Um, and so, yeah, waking up every day and really being able to say, I'm using my like, we're here for X amount of time on this planet. Can we walk away having done something good for someone else? It doesn't necessarily have to be doing something as wild as this and never sleeping, getting a social media app off the ground. But, saying hi to someone on the street or, doing something to make someone say, if we can leave this world a little bit better than what it was when we arrived, then I think maybe we're on the right track.
Have you always had this sort of ethos in you, though, Holly? Because, right, so part of what I like to do in this show is listen to my listeners as they're listening to you, right? And one thing
Yeah.
that I can hear rattling around in the back of my head is comments, throwaway lines of easy for you to say, harder for me to do, right? And so
Mm.
one question that I think that is coming through loud and clear is, um have you always been of this sort of nature, like even through your sports broadcasting, or is this something that you discovered as you've been going on this Wable journey?
Yeah, I think definitely. It's funny when you ask that question. I think back to school, and I think back to never like I never really fit in at school. I was sort of someone that was kind of in the middle. School wasn't somewhere where I made amazing friends, but I always sort of remember being the person that was kind of looking out, wanting to include someone else, and which sounds so simple, but I think it's the way I was brought up. And I was brought up by a single dad, who, yeah, pretty much gave everything to be able to look after
Mm.
me. And so I think maybe that influence and upbringing of watching my dad be two parents sort of rolled into one, and having to work, 10 times harder in the household probably instilled in me from a young age, A, hard work, but B, just like be kind to other people because you just don't know what someone else might be going through. And so I'm not like sitting here preaching and saying, I'm the best person on the planet because no, nobody's perfect. But I think it's just the ability to have a wider lens on individuals as a whole and say, well, what else is going on there? Just allow a bit more space and empathy for people in general. Is probably something that I've lived, and it's probably evolved as I've gotten older.
Love that. Really cool answer, man. Yeah, really cool answer. So now I want to ask you, like, so in terms of your, what's the word? In terms of understanding that, really sort of harnessing that fire that raged inside you when you came up with this idea, right? Because people come up with ideas
Yeah,
all the time, and
yeah,
99.99999% of them don't come out of anybody's head, right? They just stay in their heads, and then they crack the shits when they see someone else do it, right? And now I've
yeah,
no doubt that you will have gone through this process, and especially at the start, and you would have had voices in your own head saying, stick to your broker, stick to your career, stick to what you do, stick to what you know, and you would have had a bunch of people outside of you that would have thought similar things, right? And so I
yeah.
want to dig into this ability, or not this ability, this understanding that you deeply had within yourself, that you knew that this was the path that you needed to be on. So it wasn't a debate, right? It was something
Yeah,
that you knew you had to do.
yeah.
Why in the, if I could take you
Mhm,
back to that initial eureka moment, for want of a better word, right?
mhm.
Take us back to that initial moment when you were on the couch and you came up with this idea. Like, was this born? Was this something that just instantly lit a fire under your bum and made you crack on? Or was this something that you marinated on for a while? Or were there any specific situations that tipped you over the edge and go, no, bollocks to it, I'm doing it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree, like, people have ideas all the time, and you know what? I had ideas before Wable that I just didn't really bother about because, again, it wasn't something that was like, "Oh my god, I need to do this." But yeah, I think back to a couple of moments, and it's nice to having this conversation because it actually makes me reflect, and it's like, yeah, I'm enjoying this because sometimes life just moves so fast that I don't get to look back and on those moments, but yeah, I thought of the idea watching Love on the Spectrum. I loved Michael Theo, hailing from Wollongong, who's now gone on to do acting and podcasting and is amazing. But I reached out to Michael and we were complete strangers to one another. And I said, I saw you on Love on the Spectrum. He is just such a hopeless romantic. His pursuit for love, and his, unwavering willingness for a relationship, and to give his love to someone else is so inspiring. And I thought, like, I reached out to them and said, I've got this idea for an app. What do you think about it? If it was there, would you use it? And what would your parents think about it? I noticed his relationship with his mum was really close and loved her on the show. And he said, well, why don't we just have a chat about it? And Cruise Strangers in Lockdown, who I just watched on Love on the Spectrum, and I was chatting with Michael and his mum, Vanessa, and yeah, posed that question, and Vanessa immediately, and still rings in my mind now, was like, Holly, we don't understand why this isn't out there. We've been talking about this for ages. If you do this, we will back, Michael and I will back you 100%. So let us know what you're going to do. And then I remember getting off that first conversation and going, all right, I thought this is a good idea, but I think all my ideas. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a great idea, Holly. Not sometimes. But um, for me, hearing from Michael, who is autistic, has experienced many challenges, particularly when it comes to dating. I've seen him just evolve over this time because now, fast forward, now he's our ambassador, and he's just absolutely wonderful. And hearing from Vanessa's perspective as well as his mum, who just adores Michael so much, and how could you not? Hearing her perspective was really interesting too. But I remember getting off that call going, all right, no, I think I'm on something and I'm doing it. Like there was no if, buts, or maybes about it after that conversation. And funnily enough, I don't think I believe in, I don't know if I believe in fate or anything like that. I think you sort of get what you put out. But I remember just it being it's so full circle now that Michael's our ambassador, and that I pitched to two private investors, who are now on my board, Craig and Jamie. Craig has three kids, two of which are on the spectrum. Jamie's nephew's on the spectrum, and I remember pitching to them because I'd run out of money. Was building the app in the middle of the night, burnt out, doing it off the side of my day job, and they just said, "Yeah, we get that. Why hasn't this? We're in." And so I know people, and I remember really worrying about like sharing my ideas because what if someone steals it and is able to do it before me, and all these things that runs through my mind. If I could just tell myself not to worry about it so much, I would have, having hindsight. But having those conversations roll on, of course, under NDA, because I was shit scared anyone was gonna steal this, classic. It doesn't stop anyone, by the way, but I was just like, "Oh, yeah, no, I am onto something." And look, like, people from all walks of life, and with different, aspects and experiences within this are all saying like, "Yep, why is this not being done?" So when I started getting that, it really definitely put a fire under my belly, and I think by the time I'd launched, I knew that it was going to be a success. Like, I just thought, "There's no way that this isn't a success." But then when it started rolling on, and it started actually happening, and now I'm hearing from, like, couples, like, love stories, it's like, "Oh, shit, yeah, I was I was right. This people were waiting for something like this, and how cool that I was able to deliver it at the time we did." And I think that the timing of it's important too, right? I mean,
Mm.
the world needs to be ready for something like this, and I think we are moving in the right direction in terms of awareness and understanding about neurodivergent people, but we have a significantly long way to go, and that's evident too. But I think the more time I talk about it, the more I see how something like this is needed. I mean, it's not just it's not a rarity to bump into someone with neurodivergence. I mean, it's 20% of the global population that we know of. I mean, any person I've spoken to has a connection to this somehow and wants to be a part of it because it's the right thing to do. And so, yeah, for me, that aha moment was really talking with Michael and Vanessa early days, in my PJ, in my apartment in lockdown, um, just with a dream and an attitude that was just, but I didn't sleep for a properly. I can't remember the last time I had an 8 hour sleep, but it fueled me so it was exciting in that phase as much as it was daunting.
I,
So yeah.
I, there's so much that answer to enjoy. One thing that I wanted to ask though was that you mentioned there a couple of things about protecting your idea, worrying about people stealing it. So and like in
Yeah.
hindsight, going, I shouldn't even fucking bothered. Like it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And there are so many
Yeah.
people, and we can go slightly down a business track for a second here, because it's a really good lesson. And there's a lot of people that really struggle to share the magic, the gold of their product or their service or their knowledge or their awareness based on that
Yeah.
fear of someone whipping it off,
Mm.
right? And then they end up
Mm.
inevitably not being able to deliver. They end up just not delivering based on the fact that they're either riddled with fear, and they don't do it,
Mm.
or their
Mm.
passion for it just
Yeah.
fizzles out, right? Tell me about those lessons. I want to dig into that bit for a sec from a business person's point of view, an entrepreneur's point of view, because you said
Yeah.
there, tongue in cheek, very quickly, not that an NDA stops any of it from happening anyway. But tell me about that,
Yeah.
right? So how did you break that barrier? How did you take that leap of faith? What was it that allowed you to take a
Mm.
breath and go, fuck it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think Wable would be what it is today if I hadn't have had conversations with people about it. Like if I didn't speak to Michael about it, if I didn't speak to his mum Vanessa, if I didn't speak to these investors, if I didn't speak to a psychologist who got involved, all these people, Wable wouldn't be what it is today. And it might not be the same success. I mean, actually, definitely it wouldn't be as successful as it had been. So there's that. But also having hindsight now, in those early phases, I was going, "Oh my god, I've got to do this as quick as possible. I got to get this because someone's going to steal this idea." And to be honest, in the early stages, having not done this before, it it was a bit scary, and it probably if I had have kept going down that route of worrying about it so much, would have stalled me. And I think it's interesting now. I mean, I don't publicize it, but every couple of months or so, because I just have had people in my networks reach out to me on Instagram and LinkedIn who are starting up and have ideas. I meet with about 20 or 30 people just like this, and we just have a chat about ideas and things, and I kind of offer um, some of my experiences, and hopefully it helps someone. But one thing that always pops up for first time founders is I'm really stressed about someone stealing my idea, and ultimately, if I could go back, I would have said, don't worry about it so much, because I think if your idea is good enough and you execute it well enough, someone somewhere is going to try and replicate it, and that's inevitable. But one thing within your power is not letting it, stall your own progress and not letting you drive you insane. I mean, I nothing pisses you off more than a competitor. Let's be real. It's annoying, especially when you poured your heart and soul into what you're doing, and someone comes along and replicates it. And ultimately, you have to take it as a pat on the back and go, all right, well, it validates my business, and what the competitor is not is me, and I know that I can deliver this. I've already done it. Uh, I know that I'm doing it genuinely. I'm doing it for the right reasons, and that I'm going to keep doing this. It's not a flash in a pan that I'm just going to do it and get it done and see what happens. No, this Wable is evolving, and I'm evolving with it. And so, yeah, you can come along and replicate my idea and take shortcuts, and it's happened to me. But that's because I mean, my competitor now, you're focusing on what I'm doing. I'm focusing on what I'm doing. And I'm focusing on my community and what they want. I'm not focusing on competitors that come out and replicated my idea, because it's a waste of my time, and I don't have time to worry. So, I would say to Holly, like, don't worry about it because it's actually gonna happen to you. Because what you've created is making a difference. And that, kudos if you want to go and just replicate someone else's ideas, but I'd rather do my own
I
thing.
love, oh man, I think a few things, team, for your notes to highlight with that is one, everyone's focused on her and she's focused on her community. Which one's going to win? Right?
Yeah.
So that's point one. Point two, and this I'm so glad you got because this is where I was going to head with it, and I'm so glad it came out organically from you. Is they aren't you, right? And
Yeah.
it's that whole Gordon Ramsay thing when someone whinges at him and says, "Why are you making so many cookbooks?" And like, I can give more recipes in the world, but none of them are me doing it, right?
Yeah.
And none of them are going to be able
Yeah.
to replicate it in the way that I know I can do it because it's not. None of them are me.
Oh, yeah, it's such a good way of thinking about it. And by the way, love Gordon
Oh,
Ramsay.
I hate it.
Yeah,
And some
totally.
people say I'm not in my coaching style, I think, unfortunately. But I
Yeah.
live for you have had that sort of penny drop moment. And I think for a lot of people, it is a bit of a penny drop moment where it's almost like a
Mm,
line in the sand, psychologically speaking, whereby you it finally dawns on you that the secret sauce isn't the product, it isn't the service, it isn't the stuff. It's the person, it's not the vehicle, it's the person driving the vehicle that's the secret sauce, right? Um, and
yeah.
and and I think for a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs and people that have ideas, I another thing it ties into the whole topic of imposter syndrome, where people will think, oh, there's five of these people, there's seven of these apps that are already out there that are doing similar stuff. So no, mine's probably not going to have a space. But ultimately, if you're focused on your community, and they're the two key ingredients, if you're focused on the community to which you want to serve, and you understand that it's you that is the magic. It's not anybody else. It's not the stuff. It's not the platform. It's not the software. It's none of the stuff. It is you that is the difference maker between a lot. And Ollie, I mean, I'm sure you would have become tremendously acquainted in the wee hours of the morning with your AIs and all that sort of jazz. But I think this
Yeah.
also relates to a topic that a lot of people have troubles with when they feel that their position's getting done. Right, it's getting done. Their roles are getting done out of by AI and all that sort of jazz. But it still takes someone to drive the vehicle. So
Yeah.
tell me what and the third thing with this is the fact that we mentioned this before we started. Your ability, you have forged an identity for yourself around this product Wable, right? And even with that, you have become a little bit more acutely sort of sensitive to creativity and all that. So because you feel it's a bit annoying, it's like your baby, right? It's a bit of the attack. Someone calls your kid ugly, you're not going to you're not going to take to it too kindly, are
Yeah.
you?
No.
But I want to ask though, just off the back of that, do you ever get concerned with the fact that it's become so consuming, or are you content with the fact that it ends your existence at this stage?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not I don't know to say I'm concerned. However, if I was to say, like, one thing that I could improve on is probably, and it's really hard, and I actually don't know if I, will ever get there or ever be able to be better at this, but I do place so much of my self-worth on Wable and how Wable's going, and I think people see, like, the social media and all the fun, stuff and the launch on the Today Show and A Current Affair and Forbes and all these things, and it's like, "Wow, it all look like it's going so well," but there are periods where it's lonely and really long hours and really isolating and really hard. I mean, the majority of it is that, um, and you're in it there you're in it on your own, so it's sort of like you can either pull yourself into it and keep going or you don't, and I think though no one really talks about, like, those quiet periods, but that I think if you push through is where the real sort of growth happens individually as the leader of your business, and so for me, I yeah, that's something I need to get a lot better at is when Wable is going really well, I'm on top of the world and I'm feeling great and I'm so excited, and that really fuels me. But then there are significant lows that come with it as well that I am definitely not immune to.
How do
And
you how do
like
you
I said,
have
I do
how
play.
do you handle those lows?
Yeah, I actually I sometimes I don't handle them extremely well. Like that, to be honest with you, if I'm like being really candid, sometimes I've logged off a 1 a.m. call with developers and rolled into bed and cried until I fell asleep and woke up and did it all again the next day. Like that sounds. I actually don't think I've ever admitted that before because it doesn't sound great. But I, it means so much to me, probably to a point where yeah, it has affected how I felt about myself, my self-esteem, or like definitely had moments where like, oh my god, can I do this? But I think those moments are momentary, and I think that's the key is that I always come back to no, I've got this, I can keep going. And when he said, I think like there's no secret sauce. Everyone's like, how do you keep pushing through that? Because I've been doing this now for years, and all through the night in tears. Mental health is pretty shot, like to be really frank. But now I hear from real people and what this means to them, and I always come back to that. And sometimes I go back to my first conversations in my mind about Michael and Vanessa, our first conversations, and I go, no, I'm doing this. I've come this far. What I've overcome now, and I can look back and go, wow, I can't believe I got through that. I can get through anything, and so I think some of that hindsight and experience definitely helped. But I still have my moments. I still have moments where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this challenge is so difficult. Can I get through this?" And then you get out the other side and, you're like, "Oh yeah, you just gotta you have to kind of bear the weather a little bit sometimes and you just kind of." I'm like, "Okay, this period is gonna be a bit shit, but you're gonna get through it." And yeah, so I don't know if that's very probably not very inspirational, but I think it's just the ability to keep going,
No, and,
is probably
I would
key.
argue, I would argue that that's actually potentially more inspirational to some of the listeners because of the reality check that it provides, right? There's a bunch of people that will be half correct through ideas or just thinking that this is putting this in the too hard pile or something like those lines, right? And then to have someone that I mean, I don't think you would label yourself as made it, right? I don't think you would do that. But if someone that
No.
is down the track, shall we call it, from a progress and notoriety or whatever your success barometers are, right? And
Mm.
to hear someone go like talk about it in that sense is tremendously empowering and relieving for a lot of people. It really, really is. Now, and I know that part of your challenges would have come through a judgment on the fact that you're young, on the judgment on the fact that you've never been in this game before and you're coming from a completely different game. So a lot of the self judgment will
Yeah.
come from that sort of shit, right? Where you're going, fuck, all right, I'm 20, because you're 26 now. All right, back in the day, when you first started, when you were 22, 21, 22, 23, and you're going, I
Um,
should be out on the piss. Like
yeah.
this really, I wasn't like, I'm fucking 24. Like, why am I, why?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've gone through that shit
Yeah.
though, right?
Yeah. I've had those thoughts of being like, "Oh my gosh," like I could see people around me, out having fun, doing all these things, and it takes a tremendous amount of sacrifice, um, to get something going, and I certainly don't feel like I've made it. In fact, I don't even feel like I've scratched the surface. So I think, but I think, um it also makes it so much sweeter, like, when you do hit a really great milestone, for me personally, I have persevered through some really challenging times. In fact, we'd need, like, another 45-minute episode of, like, "Here's all the shit that's happened." Um, but when something good happens, like, for example, I just got an email this morning from a parent who, son has now met somebody on Wable and a relationship and was telling me all about it. Um, and so when you have those little milestones and things, it feels so much sweeter because you can look back and go, wow, I persevered through a lot to make that happen. And so, yeah, maybe in a way it's like it's all necessary. You have to have the shit parts, the really good parts, the highs, the lows. It all plays a part in taking you where you're supposed to go, I think. And yeah, somehow I don't know. I think I read somewhere, or read a quote somewhere that was like having a startup is like building a no, jumping out of a plane and building a parachute on the way down. And I think that pretty much sums it up and feels like you're doing that over and over, and each time it becomes slightly less daunting than the time before. And yeah, you just sort of keep at it.
A couple of things I want to dissect with that with you, if this is okay. And the first one is, you said the word sacrifice there, which is becoming, it's becoming at risk of being overused, right? And I have this thing about language where I do feel that the language that we use puts up more barriers than we realize. And sacrifice is a shitty thing, right? Sacrifice is death. Sacrifice is the death of, the killing off of, right? Go biblical. It's 2 planks of wood and some nails, right? So, do you think that in those really low moments where you were getting sorely tested, can we argue that because your identity is attached to something that is greater, that this Wable thing that is greater because of the fact, and it's greater than yourself because you are serving a community that you feel desperately needs it? Do we think that instead of referring to sacrifice of going out on the piss or whatever, right? You were more driven by a loyalty to serve those people that you committed to serve? Could it be
Yeah.
argued that that is probably a better way of looking at it?
Yeah, it's a very good point. When you said that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I should really reframe that." Because I think at the time, yeah, I mean, when you say it like that, I think the real sacrifice would have me not had done what I've done, because I would have looked back and gone, "Oh, I really should have seen that through. It could have been, great." That ultimately would have been devastating. So I think the way you've reframed that is actually made me think, oh, I really, I don't actually think about it like that, but maybe we just throw around, maybe I'm guilty of throwing around
The world is.
sacrifice
The world
myself.
is, right? The
Yeah,
world is,
yeah,
right? And I'm loving the openness of this conversation, because I think that the world has become lazy in its framing of things that we need in life in order to advance
yeah,
our lives, right? And that's where what you're
yeah,
highlighting beautifully is the fact that you have such a loyalty towards helping neurodivergent people become connected in society, and having society become connected with them, and that
yeah,
the purpose, the reason far outweighs the excuse. And
totally, yeah.
and the way that you're presenting that and representing that, I think, is tremendous. I think it really is. It really is mega. Now, I want to ask, we've talked about the rear view mirror, but for a lot of people, there will be the ageist commentary. I can hear it. There's a little section of the crowd going, she's 26. What the fuck does she know about life, right? Right?
Mm,
And let's
mm.
be straight. It will be getting said, right? So, are you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's been said to me in pitch
Oh,
meetings.
fuck
My
that.
God, I pitched to an investor once that was like, "Oh, do you think that when, soon you might bring on, another CEO who's a bit older, to take over the company?"
Why? What was the reasoning?
All right, interesting. Oh, I like what you said. I think there is a little bit, and look, I look at it two ways. Yeah, I would love to have the knowledge of somebody that has been in this game forever, but I can only learn so much in what I can and on the go. But I also think, I think there's an advantage to being a young, and to be honest, I think there's a bit of advantage to being a bit naive. Like, I know my shit a bit, I know my shit and I'm learning as I'm going, but I don't know everything. But I think that naivety allows you to do something as wild as starting something like this, because if you saw all the risks, and I'm risk adverse. I'm very much probably a risk adverse sort of person, but I still have that dream, the dreamer and the naivety enough to do it. Because if you knew of every single risk on the planet and you saw all the red tape and all the challenges that were coming, um, then I don't know if you would I don't know if you would do it, or maybe you wouldn't do it in the same way. You wouldn't do it as freely, and you wouldn't probably do it as passionately. So yeah, I understand, a wholly in 10 years' time from now, I'll be a master at this, I've learnt a lot in a short amount of time, but I think that, like, dogged attitude and that naivety is powerful, and I think that's why we'll see more young entrepreneurs, I suppose, of enough, you know, I think that if you can run with that, but you can also surround yourself with people, like, for example, I now have a board of people who have skin in the game, who can be there and probably reel me in a little bit if I need to. But you also need me. You also need someone running hot and going full throttle at this without thinking about every risk. You kind of need a mix of both. And I think a bit of naivety and a bit of a gung ho sort of attitude is good to have at the driving force of a business if you can have you've still got to have your wits about you as well.
I love that. That is such an amazing answer, right? You could use the phrase "ignorance is bliss," but
Mm,
one thing that rang in my head as you were talking there was a Jim Rohn, massive Jim Rohn fan, and when he said, you know, you're worried about trying, well, why wait until you get the bill for not trying, right? And
mm,
and he
yeah,
goes, everything's risky, right?
yeah,
Doing so, giving something that goes a risk, not giving something that goes a risk, right? Everything's
yeah,
got risk to it, whichever way you
100%.
go, whether you give something a crack or don't give something a crack. Because, like you said before, right? If we were to go back to that word sacrifice, the what you would have sacrificed through not going through that door of opportunity at that time would
Yeah,
have been
yeah.
incredibly significant, right? And so risk
Oh,
is
huge,
risk
yeah.
is either side, but I think a lot of the time when it comes to general vernacular, or general conversation, general chit chat, the risk is always weighed. The risk always relates to the thing that takes you away from where you are currently, right? And there is not enough
Mm,
conversation around the risk of staying where you are currently. You know,
yeah,
everything's got a
yeah,
risk to
yeah,
it, right? And there is no such thing.
yeah.
You can never avoid risk, right? If you think about it in
No,
those
it's
terms.
always gonna be
So
yeah,
it's just
totally.
choose your
Yeah,
risk. Choose your risk. Do you want to gamble on doing sweet fuck all and seeing if that works, or do you want to gamble on having a punt, having a crack? Because the reality
yeah,
is, doing fuck all's always going to be there, right? Right.
yeah,
It's not going to go away. If some couch is not going to move, right? You can still sit there if you really
yeah,
want. Um, but like
yeah,
before I let you go there, and I asked the final question I always ask. Before I ask that, um, I want to look ahead for you because you said you're about to launch into the UK, the US. Two parts to this.
yeah.
One, are you a believer in things like goals and all that sort of stuff? And two, how much are you shitting yourself?
I love that. It's yeah, I'm definitely shitting myself a lot. But I think maybe shitting myself slightly less than the first launch, because the first launch they were still like, I think this is gonna work. But I don't know until I know. And of course, thankfully it did. But now it is sort of like, okay, well, I've proven I can solve this problem. I've proven I'm the one to do it. I've got people backing me. I've got more resources than I had then. Then there's no reason why this isn't going to go sort of the way that I'm hoping it will. And so yeah, I'm still shitting myself, but maybe just slightly less than the the first launch. Um, and I'm just excited. I think overall, I mean, I've been working some really hectic hours and it's been pretty exhausting, but I think, um, yeah, I think I always set myself new goals, and I don't know, like, I don't have a vision board or anything like that. Maybe I should get into that, but I'm always sort of, my goals change all the time. Like, my goal at the moment now is to get to a US, UK launch successfully, not having fallen completely apart. The bags under my eyes will tell you differently, but then, it will be servicing those, my first initial customers as well as I did when I launched in Australia and New Zealand. And then the next goal might be something else that pops up because it's ever changing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I set myself goals all the time, but ultimately when I started this, my goal was to make a difference. And thankfully I can already tick that off. And so I just really want to do it on scale, for more people, create more opportunities within Wable for more people to get involved because, you know, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't have involved more people. I want to get more people involved to see how big we can grow Wable because, it is bigger and above me and I need more amazing minds behind it than just me, running so hard at this. So I'm excited. I'm really excited for that. And yeah, hopefully we can chat again, in 6 or 12 months' time and I can update you on the next thing I'm shitting myself
Honestly,
about.
man, it would be
Because I'm sure
it
that's
would
gonna
be an
be
absolute joy, Ollie, because like you've definitely got a cheerleader in me. You'll definitely have me in the stands chanting your name and whatnot. I think off the back of this, I think a whole bunch of other people will be as well. I find it
Thank
fascinating
you.
how someone of your character, your personality, someone of your mold, shall we call it, who the initial judgment, which society is a prick for, that initial judgment of society would be you're young blonde women like girls, not woman, human girls, and coming from a completely different world. What do you know? Like what those investors said, are you going to get someone older and uglier than you to really give it a crack at some stage, right? Um, for you to literally be so loyal to something that you're so passionate about, you could argue that passion super it's passion far outweighs things like it can far outweigh things like experience, and it can far outweigh because experience can hold you back as much as really drive you forward as well, right? So, and I just love the story and how it's evolving, and I think that you absolutely deserve all the success in the world, and I'm sure you're going to go bloody get it, right?
Thank
Through
you.
the focus, what you said there, Tim, like if we were to summarize this game for your notes, if you're focusing on the right people, you can't go wrong. You can't go
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
Whatever your purpose is around helping those people, you cannot go wrong. And I'm certainly taking that away from this
yeah.
conversation myself. So, Ollie, before
Oh,
I let you go, though, one final question that we ask everybody, and you might have already alluded to this a little bit, but I'll ask you a bit more succinctly. As you head towards the US and the UK frontiers, and beyond, as we are all growing,
mhm.
we all recognise that we all have vulnerabilities that we need to improve on. And as you're moving forward, though, what is the one thing, if you say there was one thing that you need to get better at, what would it be?
Mm, I need to definitely get better at, um, I call it stopping and smelling the roses. It's not until, like, I have a conversation like this that I actually pause and reflect and go, "Oh, okay, Wable's come this far." I'm always going always, like, the bar is always being set at a different height for me, and, you know, if I could look back at Holly who thought of this idea in lockdown, I knew I could achieve something like this, but actually getting there and being a part of it, I don't really reflect on that much, and so that's something I definitely need to get better at because, yeah, I mean, you're working your ass off, right? You've got to have moments where you've got to pat yourself on the back because no one else is going to do it. You've got to keep yourself moving and keep going. So I think something I want to get better at is taking those small moments, is even if it's in between a meeting to go, all right, look at what I'd planned to do. Look at what you've ticked off in this amount of time and sort of let that fuel you because you don't have that much else to fuel you. I mean, I look to myself for that fuel and I look to our community, and I'm so grateful and lucky that they actually reach out and take the time to tell me what's going on. So it doesn't just feel like it's little old me anymore. But
Mm.
yeah, I think taking those small moments when I can and letting them fuel me and letting them brace me for the next challenge and get me ready for the next challenge is something I I probably need to get a little bit better at it. I'm working on it. I'm a work in
Well,
progress.
look, man, you can. I mean, look. Speaking, I think ADHD can really prevent us because as soon as we've done one thing, you're after the next thing, right?
Oh, that is so true.
We
Yeah.
have. Oh, fuck,
Yeah.
you're preaching there, sister, in a big, big way.
A blessing and a
You're
curse.
preaching
It
there.
is though. It's a blessing and a curse.
Totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more, man. Couldn't agree more. And
Yeah.
it's weird, right? Because we generally tend to keep going for the next big thing until we crash and burn. And it's only then that we go,
Mm.
fuck, we've actually done all right. You know what I mean? Well, it
Yeah.
takes a crash. Hopefully, if we can avoid crashing every now and then, and just give ourselves a second to refuel that desire, then, geez, we go a lot further, right? No, man,
Oh,
one and the
yeah.
same in that regard, Hol. One and the same. Hey, look,
Yeah.
Holly, it's been an absolute joy to have you on. It really, really has, and I cannot wish you.
Aw.
I can't wish you any more best, any more luck because you're gonna nail it. You're gonna be success. You're gonna be amazing. You're gonna be such an incredible representation of Australian ingenuity as well. We haven't even talked about that, right? But you're going to be such an amazing flag bearer for the UK and US markets, and Australia
Oh,
needs to be
thank
proud of
you.
people like you because they're producing some more superstars. So Holly Fowler, thank you
Thank you so
so
much.
much for joining me on the Success Curious podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you. This is seriously like the best interview ever. I just really enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, because it actually stopped me to pause and reflect. But your questions were really got me thinking more than I have in a while
Be careful, be
about Wable and
careful,
what we've
right?
done.
Thinking's
So
bad for you, right? We'll
it's
both
great.
we'll have to go lie down after this. But Tim, on behalf of Holly Fowler and
Yeah.
myself, well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure it'll take stacks of notes. I'll make sure that Holly and Wable are absolutely linked into the show notes. You're crazy to have a look. And look, if you have got someone that you know that is neurodivergent, or if you've got a bit of a neurodivergent tendency yourself, check out Wable, man. I mean, I know that I'm going to be punching it out to a few people that I know that are in this space. I'm actually going to send it to a few psychologists that I know and doctors that I know as well, because I think that would really help that landscape, the actual medical landscape, to actually be able to handle a lot of the increased demand of this. And so I think the benefits of what Holly is producing is going way beyond people having a date and a kid and a cuddle, right? I think it's way, way beyond that. And I think it's absolutely tremendous. So team, stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, share Wable with a friend, and we'll speak to you again next time.